Welcome to the Keelhauled podcast. I'm the voice of Sea of Thieves, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news for you. So tie yourself to the mast and hold fast.
Welcome to part 2 of the Golden Sands blog post interview that I had. This is the second half of the interview that we covered, and it dives into a lot more information, going into more of this update, some thoughts on it, and just how we feel. If there is time, I will see if I can squeeze in a story. If not, I will hold on to it for the next week after that. And I'm looking to maybe do another episode this week, hopefully covering some thoughts on Sea of Thieves and Series X gameplay. This week's episode is brought to you by 4 Patreons: Big Bad Pad, Chris Johnson or CJ Super Pack, Chateau Neuf, and El Jefe Esteban. Thank you all for your support on Patreon. It means a lot to me. It's a tough balance because the goal of this is to give us something to do and to kind of have that Halloween celebration that a lot of us are hoping and expecting. You know, with holidays coming up, we're expecting a Christmas holiday event where we'll probably get the mistletoe and we'll get the Jingle Bell Tavern song back in, and we'll probably see some different examples of kind of mistletoe weapons or costumes, maybe to kind of round out the rest of that set. If you're just jumping into this episode and you're not sure quite what we're talking about, in the previous episode in part 1, we were discussing how the cosmetics for this update didn't seem to really fall in line with the actual theme of the event, outside of them just being kind of a spooky, ghouly kind of system. And we were talking about how this update had potentially been something that was more to keep us contented while they worked on bigger content like Tall Tales. As we dive into the rest of this update, I hope you guys go back, take a chance to listen to the previous episode, part 1 again. There was some good conversation, but as we get into the second part, you'll see we really got onto some fun ideas and some good discussion. So thanks for listening. And obviously with this event, one of the biggest changes that came into the game was the in-game tracking event. Now at the end of your tabs where you can check out your equipment or your inventory, quests, reputation, things like that, at the very end, we now have event tracking. This is something that a lot of people have been asking for. This is something that has been kept track of through the website and still is through the website. A lot of this stuff is still available for you to dive into. I wanted to kind of touch on this before I jump to you guys. I am curious to hear your thoughts on this. I love that this is in the game. I think they've done a great job getting this in as quickly as they could, given that they started to do these weekly and monthly events that continuously change. The biggest issue that I think I see with this is I hope this is the start and not the end of where they have the UI. They're definitely willing to tinker around with the UI, obviously with the changes made to reputations and emissaries, ledgers and things. From a design perspective, and I'm sure they know this, but I have to state it just so that if someone's listening to this and they don't know, the events tab right now has a ton of great information, but it is easy to lose yourself in what level you're in if you aren't familiar with the actual update information. And generally, as a good rule of thumb, you don't want to push someone more than 3 clicks deep into any UI element so that they don't get lost in it. And I think the deepest I found was 5 clicks, which at that point when I first started the game, I had been reading the patch notes and diving into the events tab. I immediately got lost on what part of the event I was actually in. And I actually had to go back to the website to actually kind of orient myself on what part of the event I was actually diving into. Because we've got the normal part of the event, which is actually just going out and dealing with the actual the fate of the damned voyages. We've also got the Soul Flame Lantern portion of it, where you just have to go out and kill 200 and 400 skeletons, and then we'll eventually have the oh gosh, now I'm blanking on
Stronghold
what it's called.
spoils.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
I think
you.
that
Where
one
you'll get
is available right now. I think that is just a static one as well. But that's a lot, yeah.
So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. I'm sure you're just as happy as I am to have the events tab in game, but how do you, just to kind of start with the top of it, how do you feel about the UI? And then I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are in how this affects Golden Sands Blogpost with having this information for you.
Yeah, I'll say right off the bat that the problem you just described, the confusion factor of trying to make kind of sense of the large amount of information you're presented with through subtabs in this big list format, is that's really honestly the reason that I started Golden Sands Blogpost. It was not that there was like a lot of sub menus and things, but it's when you had the build rat adventures and things, and you're just presented with a large block of information. I found that some of my friends had kind of a difficulty keeping track of what they needed to do when they were presented with 10 commendations and trying to keep track of all of them and think like, okay, we're doing this, but don't forget that we need to kill X number of these while we're doing it. And we need to, and you had the gunpowder skeletons and things like that. And so I think that what we try to do with the blog is take the information you're going to get from the game, just what you would read in game, but just kind of rearrange it and represent it in a way that makes it a little more readable, makes it a little more in frames like, well, in a simpler way to read. It just tells you right out, this is your overarching challenge for the month. And within that, you've got these main little, and then we kind of present it in that way that will hopefully break it down easier for people. But the fact that we have to do that, it does go to your point that it can be a lot, and it can be, I think, presented in a way that's better. If it was presented in a way that's, in game, it was like, well, here's the tab of things you can do over the whole month, and here's the tab of things you can do just this week. And then, that would immediately make it very easy to read what's the difference between this challenge and that challenge. What are the things I need to keep track of right now and have on my mind? Or what are the things that I don't need to pay attention to when I'm looking at a list of 15, 20 commendations or whatever? I agree with you there that the way they present this information can go a long way towards, one, people's understanding of it, and then from that, people's eagerness to engage with it.
No, definitely, yeah.
Dray, how are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I agree. The UI could be a lot better. I don't know, just talking purely about the events tab, the fact that this current event, Fated Fortune, is one of 3 options on the main page. Well, it's not even on the main page. It's just like the special events. It's under its own tab or under its own option, which doesn't really help itself very well. It's good that the information's there in game versus like the Summer of Sea of Thieves, where you had to keep checking back with the website and then hoping that was tracking it properly. So it's an definite improvement, and I would like to see them improve on the UI. But yeah, the UI hasn't necessarily been a particularly strong point because the build rats ones can be pretty messy. There's some stuff I was looking at trying to figure out what commendations I needed to do under mercenary one, I think. And there is about 9 pages there alone where they just kept throwing stuff up into it as they kept updating it. So it is like, yeah.
That's one way I think that this event tab in game, it's not just going to change like, oh, we used to have to look at the website, now we don't have to. I think it's going to change a lot of the way they present challenges going forward.
Yeah.
And it's essentially going to phase out that mercenary tab. So I think that you're still going to have maybe a build rat adventure tab for a long time permanent challenge, like something like the Ashen Winds, which came with its own tab in the build rat menu. and you go to that tab and you have these challenges and they're there forever. And some of them are kind of a long-term thing you'll have to work towards. But when you have a set of challenges that it's meant to be more just for this monthly thing, which is what the mercenary tab was for, that gets really unwieldy. And I think that the event tab will just kind of replace that. If you want something that's just this month, it will be in the event tab as a special event. And if you want something that's a long time and permanent, it will have its own little box under build rats.
Even if like they kept it as it did add in still to that build rat tab, if they highlighted it under events as in this is the new thing under the events as well as it being in the other place, so that when it's retired from that month, it stays in game somewhere. But just highlighting it and getting people's eyes on it, that's
Right,
like
that's a good
part
point.
of the challenge. I think that's also partially why they've introduced mysterious notes, which we haven't really touched on, is to bring people's attention to certain things that are happening within the game that the information might not be so obviously surfaced to some players.
Well, Dray, you bring up a great point, and I do want to touch on mysterious notes because I personally I've spoken about in the past, and I'm not sure if you guys are privy to this, about my thoughts on the mysterious notes and what I think a better implementation would be for those. I've even seen around online some pretty decent mock-ups as well. I wanted to bring up the disconnect that I have with the UI implementation in Sea of Thieves real quick and see if I'm crazy or if this is actually just something that is just an oversight. Because with the mysterious notes, we now get these from the Build Rat company when you first spawn in. First off, I can't believe that we have an option to skip the intro, but we still have to go through a wake up animation.
That seems a little bit like an oversight.
Yeah. It's a one step forward, one step back. Kind of, we're stuck at the same spot that we were. We're not getting into the game faster. We're just getting into the game in a different way.
Unfortunately,
but that's a whole different topic. But with the mysterious notes, it was clear that Rare wanted to make a tangible item for our pirates to hold to be aware of new content. The problem that I run into is the disconnect between the Ships of Fortune updates with the tables that have the little pop-up UI that shows you it has like a, I don't know if you would describe it like it's a UI element, but it would be like a holographic image that kind of displays when you run up to the table and you see the little thing up in front of you. Same thing with dropping a voyage. When you run up to a voyage, it'll show you what the voyage is instead of having to physically pick up the voyage, open it up and look at it. I have a really bad disconnect with seeing a physical note for the mysterious notes on what we're getting new updates for, and thinking they really wanted this to be an in-game item that is something that's tangible, that leads into that immersion with a game. And as soon as I grab that voyage or get the voyage from Lorena, I run over to my ship, I put the voyage down, I vote on the voyage, and it immediately pops up a UI element that tells me what that voyage is. And I'm like, well, that is not immersive at all. So if we're going to break immersion, then why not have something akin to a bulletin board, or say like the UI elements that came up with the actual Cursed Sales event, where you would go over
those stands.
There'd be a physical thing. So I'm curious, how do you guys feel about the way Mysterious Notes was implemented? Would you rather to have more of like a static board or something that kind of led you to something? I was thinking like a bulletin board, but had all of the Fort of the Damned aesthetic, with little gourds around the bottom base of the actual pillar posts, and they could change up that bulletin board given the event. So say like when Christmas comes, it's got little mistletoe and bells and what have you around it. Is that something you guys would look forward to, or are you thinking that the Mysterious Notes are a cleaner way of introducing that information to players?
It's a difficult one. I really like the idea of a bulletin board and think that is something that should exist or should have existed for a long time on the outposts. It just gives the outposts a little bit more of a reason to exist. You can just sort of check that out, see what's happening, get onto your voyages, rather than just them being a place where you quickly stop off and sell your goods. And But I kind of see where Rare is coming from with the mysterious note. With a bulletin board, it could be just like what happened with Duke and is potentially going to happen with Lorena. It's something that players can just run past and not interact with when they start a game, or not know to interact with to get information about a new thing or a new feature. With the mysterious note, it's there as soon as you wake up and it's in your hand. You look at you're more drawn to want to look at it and read it. But then also the mysterious note feels like it was a step before the events tab, and then the events tab is what the mysterious note could potentially have become. So I don't know if it's come at the wrong time, or I don't know. It's a difficult one. I'd like to see them expand on it and maybe work on other ways to get this information to players within the game. But I think that might even just be a complete overhaul of the tavern and how that looks.
Yeah, that's something that Dray and I had talked to each other about, and I had talked on the conversation about a lot, was how could that be different? How could the tavern space be used to inform players about what's going on and have basically just a better way to do all the function that Duke was doing, because he wasn't necessarily doing all those functions very well. And the bulletin board is something we've brought up a lot. So I think there's definitely a benefit to not doing it as a bulletin board, to have things that are in your hands or just in your UI, like the event tab. Because then if you're trying to look up a challenge on the event tab and you're on an island doing the challenge, you can quickly just pause, go to the menu, look at it, remember what that challenge was, and like, oh, I'm up to 16 out of 20 or whatever on this thing, and I got to do that. Whereas if it was just on a bulletin board in the tavern, you'd have to go back to check it out. You wouldn't, and so for certain things, a bulletin board can work well. And for certain things, a bulletin board might not completely work well. And I also agree that potentially people could just ignore it. And I think that this is just kind of a way of them trying to get really in your face with it. I think part of that was also why they put Lorena where she's standing, is that when
she hasn't moved so far.
Right. When you walk through the door, you walk past Lorena. You can't not walk past her. You might not talk to her, but you're going to see her. And if you're a new player, I don't know if people were necessarily seeing or talking to Duke. If you went up and talked to the tavern maid, it was useless. There was no reason to talk to her. So then a new player might assume that, talking to Duke is useless. Or I talked to him last month and I don't understand that talking to him every month is going to present me with new information. And so putting a note right in their hand to look at, it kind of gets around any confusion that's possible, where no, you're getting the new information. It's right there. And you don't really have an option to just ignore it. I mean, you can kind of put the note away and not look at it, but you're way more likely to see it. So I kind of want a combined approach. I'd like to keep the notes, but I would like to have the bulletin boards. I would like to have more NPCs talking about what's going on. And more kind of things like that. And there's one thing I've been talking about for a long time, which is that there's a broken down staircase in the tavern leading up to who knows what's up there. But that's a potential space that could be used for something as well. And I think that having a more bustling outpost of NPCs with more dialogue that's maybe changing frequently to reflect what's going on in the story, even if it doesn't necessarily have a gameplay purpose. It might guide players towards new content, or it might just be there for flair and for immersion and telling more of the story. That is something I'd like to see a lot in those taverns and on those outposts. And then the bulletin board as well.
Yeah, I mean, saying that about just giving the NPCs more flavor, going back to Cursails, I believe some of the NPCs had different dialogue during that. Or at the very least, they all pretended to be scared of the potential threat of the skellies.
They were locked out, right? They were locked out of their shop.
Yeah, or maybe that was it, yeah.
And then they were cowering around the skeleton signpost, and they all had unique dialogue.
Yeah,
new to that event.
Yeah, that was neat.
It felt dynamic.
Explored. Yeah.
It felt like something that was happening in the world, and it was being reacted to beyond just us. Every time something we had an entire fort convert into portions of the Sea of the Damned, and everyone on the islands are just like, all right, well,
we've got a big shouty skeleton head in the sky, and nobody's really said anything about it. It's just like he's there. an island over sometimes from an outpost going, I'll fight you and come over here and put up your dukes. And no one sort of like mentioned him. Umbra has now, but
Yeah, my favorite is the if you're doing an Ashen Lord fight on an island, and there's like a cargo NPC, Crooked Henry or whatever, Wild Henry, and he's like, hey, I love living on the island, and I just sell plants or whatever. Like he's just not reacting at all. And if you just maybe changed his animation, like have a little bit of a cowering animation like they had, and then change one line of dialogue, like, boy, it's tough running cargo, but it's, someone's got to do this job while there's a scary skeleton raining volcanic rocks on my island. But little things like that is something that I'd like to see a lot more of. And something this update has done something kind of cool with the week-to-week challenges and in how you go on a voyage and you talk to Duke, and now you, as part of a voyage, you're involving an NPC with his own new kind of dialogue. And that's something they haven't really done before.
Yeah, especially as during those voyages, those NPCs have a unique piece of dialogue, which is quite cool. And like something I'd like to see fed into other parts.
Oh, that actually brings up an issue that I found when out and about the other day. So if you have, and I don't know if this is something that'll get fixed, but if you have one of these voyages down and say you have to go talk to Merrick to retrieve his boot that the Bilgerat crew so slovenly knocked off the dock, you can't turn in anything to Merrick.
I've noticed that when I did it as well. I was like, that's really strange.
Yeah.
Why you're locked out of that.
Yeah, so that was kind of a bummer. So even after we had a galleon, and a crew member of mine had a crate of fish to turn in, and we were sailing off to go just continue on our voyage. As soon as we got there, he's like, I can't turn anything in, and I'm like, oh, you have to give him the boot. And he's like, what boot? And I'm like, the boot that's in the water next to the dock. And he's like, okay. So he went, he got the boot, he turned it in, still couldn't turn anything in. And he's like, well, this sucks. I have these really nice fish that we got and I can't turn them in. I'm like, crap, we're going to have to actually cancel the whole voyage. So that's something that I hope changes. I think the biggest drawback to the system that is being used for these NPCs as turn-in points is that they have to be static for whatever reason. We've never had roaming NPCs. Yes. We've had NPCs change position, but never actually walk around. It'd be great to have Deadeye Dray, Charlotte. Deadshot Charlotte. Yeah. Sorry, I always think of.
It's fine. I always think of. Like, before Deadeye, I was going to go with Deadshot, and I was like, God damn it, Deadshot Charlotte's in there.
I always think of you when I think of Deadshot Charlotte because I just like Deadeye Dray better. It's just a better name.
Deadeye Charlotte.
But yeah, so having her like walk around, and as you're sailing up, like patrolling an area, and have her, you're pulling up your sloop and you're pulling up the sail, and you can see on the beach she's walking, and a skeleton spawns, and she pulls out her sniper and she just snipes the skeleton on the spot, and then goes back to her spot, and she's like, oh hey, I saw you coming. You brought these guys. Thanks, I guess. Something like that would be great to have that kind of liveliness to all of the NPCs that are out and about.
Sure. It's just like,
I've often had the
memory. Yeah,
I've long had this idea of, before they actually put those NPCs on islands, like the Deadshot Charlottes of the game and the Wild Henrys. Before those existed, I thought they have all these campfires, and it would be a cool thing if, when you approach an island, it will then populate it with some randomly generated loot that is maybe on the island or maybe in the water, deep along the shores in the shallows. And they kind of populate things randomly. I thought it'd be cool if every time you approach an island and there's a campfire, there would be a chance that an NPC would spawn sitting around the campfire, and they would create kind of an emergent voyage, akin to like when you discover a message in a bottle, and you're like, oh, I found this voyage, maybe we can do it. But instead of it being just a message in a bottle or a parchment that's in a barrel, instead it would be a person sitting around a campfire, randomly generated, that would then tell you like, oh, hey, I've got this voyage. Could you do it for me? And you come back and I'll give you some treasure or whatever. And that was kind of a very early idea I had for the game. And, or they could do something even more interesting with it if it was like someone who says, oh, I'm cast away on this island. My crew left me behind. Could I come with you aboard your ship and be delivered to Golden Sands Outpost or another outpost? And you say, sure. And then you have this kind of NPC that you have to guide and protect. And if they die, then you just won't get any reward. They'll respawn somewhere else, be gone from your options. But then if you give them there, then they're like, thanks, here's some gold, here's some reputation because I'm actually a gold hoarder and I needed your help. So, or whatever, things like that. But it's not a very interesting quest, but what it is just more kind of immersive dialogue for NPCs and stuff.
Yeah, it's just more immersive encounters that can enrich your adventure in a different kind of way from another time that you played. And that's kind of...
It'd be real.
Yeah, just making more stories. Or if you got attached to some poor guy and then attacked by like 5 megalodons as you try to get him somewhere else.
You're like, no, swashbuckling Dave. Smelly Steve. He got bit by the megalodon and now he died. We can't deliver him.
Yeah.
You would create that weird little bond in that moment. You'd be like, no, we lost Dave. That would always be kind of a funny thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to toss out the idea right now so it can get timestamped for when Rare actually implements it. But they give us the ability to come across a pineapple that coincidentally happens to have a face on it and find out that Grey Morrow has trapped some poor soul's body in it or essence in it. And you have to carry this pineapple around to the different people that he interacted with to kind of, pass on his message of sorrow that he's like, hey, I was Smelly Steve. I'm now trapped inside this pineapple. I really would wish you don't burn me or eat me. But if you could take me to these different places to say goodbye, I'd really appreciate it. And then, you have to go deliver Smelly Steve, the Pineapple King, to the different places to go say goodbye to his friends.
It's bittersweet, but amazing. I like that.
Well, that's pineapple.
You could do the same with like a pet animal. You come across a cursed monkey or a cursed parrot, sort of like Salty. And they say, hey, I'm cursed. I'm actually a pirate. I got turned into a monkey. Do you want to, escort me to some other locations so I can tell people? And you say, sure. And then they start following you around as if they're your pet. But they also...
That'd be cool.
You can interact with them and get dialogue and stuff.
It'd be great to have a story told like that, have someone with you, whether it be a pet or a pineapple or a person, and have that opportunity to get, the same way that stories are told through the tall tales, but you have to sit there or not at the NPC and listen to their story, but to have someone with you along the way and be like, oh man, yeah, we tried to do the Heart of Fire. We tried to go after Stitcher Jim and it was horrible. These are the things that happened to us. And, as you're going along this tall tale to seek out Stitcher Jim, they're relaying their account of what happened. And you're trying to help them recover the souls of their crew. And they were the sole survivor, something to that effect.
Something, that kind of like goes with an idea that I think Jeff has also had for a while, is just having tall tales that aren't necessarily part of a larger overarching story. Like that obviously fits in or could fit into other things that have happened with tall tales, but just a tall tale that is a story.
Ahoy there, pirates. Hope you guys are having a good time enjoying this part 2 of the episode. And I just want to let you guys know again, this episode is sponsored not only by the Patreons or patrons who have decided to support me that way, so they don't have to worry about hearing these advertisements, but also by many other sponsors in the actual show notes. If you guys head over there, we've got Loot Crate, we've got audiobooks.com. There's also the Green Man Gaming affiliate link, which I tend to prefer, which is really nice. I mean, audiobooks are really nice to be able to listen to when you're at work if you run out of podcasts. But if you're looking to play some games and you do have a PC, Green Man Gaming is a great way to get some keys for games legitimately at a cheaper deal. In fact, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War just came out. They're offering 11% off of their versions that they can give you for the BattleNet. That way, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're getting some sort of discount. You'll always get some sort of discount with that. They've also got a pretty good deal that's going on if you're a fan of Warhammer. If you maybe really love the Inquisitor or Space Wolf, any of those games, the Mechanicus, and those are going on till November 24th, and you can get up to 80% off is the highest discount for those games. So head over to Green Man Gaming if you guys are looking to pick up some games for your PC and want to save some money on it. Thanks, and I'll talk to you guys later. What do you guys think about the idea? Obviously, we have Ghost of Greymarrow in Sea of Thieves now. With the ancients, they've always been very kind of abstract things to us. Having spirits that we come across on islands that walk us along, similar to like oh gosh,
Ramsey.
What's his? No, big mustache, Pendragon.
Oh, Pendragon.
Right.
Having Pendragon and his crew kind of, but as if it were the ancients, having the ancients actually escort us around, telling us stories that relate to the different paintings and their lives on islands, and having that implemented, say like with tall tale traps, where you're walking around through Devil's Ridge. And the traps are now active because you're engaging with this ghost, and the spirit that killed them are the traps that you now have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Kind of a voyage system through there. I'd love to see some changes up to the island that they've been doing. I did want to touch on a couple quick things with this update, just so people have the information. I don't know if you two have ventured out to the Ashen Lords since this update. I have. I have completely changed my mind on the Ashen Lords. I actually really like the encounter now that they've had the health reduced and the Ashen Wind Skull. The value of the Ashen Wind Skull has been doubled. And you actually get a chest of rage and a ritual skull as rewards. Yeah. Anytime you actually fight the encounter. So there's a bit of a breadcrumb trail with this event now. And the fight with a well-crewed galleon, I think, took us around 15 minutes to knock out.
Nice.
And it felt perfect. It felt spot on as far as balance. And I'm curious if you two had ventured into that territory again, and if so, what your thoughts on it were.
Well, I think that's one thing they've done a good job of, is gradually, maybe they don't nail the balance on everything right out the gate, but they are studying kind of engagement or analytics or whatever, and looking at things and making those changes. And so I think that the ship cloud kind of fleet, skeleton ship fleets, those have been quite changed over this year. Yeah, mm-hmm. Drastically changed in terms of what are your rewards you're getting, and maybe some buffing or nerfing, to some of the more annoying like cursed cannonballs and things like that. So and then with the Ashen Lords. So I think that the Ashen Lords fight is really good. I had a lot of fun with it. And I like that it can create kind of for us at least, the way I play with some of my crewmates, is created like a loop where we do the Ashen Winds battle, and now we have an Ashen Wind Skull. And because we have an Ashen Wind Skull, that is going to inform what we do next. Because, if we run into skeleton ships, sometimes we would not engage with them. But because we have the Ashen Windskull, we're like, oh, let's go after that skeleton ship and set them on fire because there's a commendation for doing that, X number of times. Or another one would be, if you complete an Ashen Windskull and then a fort comes up or another Ashen Winds cloud comes up, we could say, oh, let's go do that because now we have the Ashen Windskull to set skeletons on fire with, and it makes it more fun to fight skeletons. And the same goes for a Chest of Rage. Actually, one of my favorite activities they did in the game, and then they took it out, was the Chest of Rage voyages, the Raging Bounty voyages, which were a loop of basically you go and you get a Chest of Rage, and then you go and do a little fight with skeletons, and you can use the Chest of Rage against them. And when you've got like 4 crew members kind of circling this Chest of Rage and like striking it with the sword and trying to bring the skeletons in so they get hit by the explosion of flames, it's a very different battle than the normal fighting the skeletons with swords yourself, and it just feels different. So it's kind of something new. And then they took that voyage out. So getting a guaranteed way to get a Chest of Rage is fun. Having a guaranteed way to get the Ashen Windskull is fun because both of them just feel like fun tools that then kind of inform what you do next.
Kind of wish that the Ashen Windskull kind of interacted with a little bit more in the world. Like you could light things. I mean, you can light campfires. Maybe if you could light the beacons or light other players on fire, that'd be a little bit more interesting. Even if there was just another element out there in the world that you could try and get to with a skull and get a commendation for lighting it. That'd be also pretty cool. But since the change, I think it's really good that they give a guaranteed Chest of Rage because those things are incredibly rare. The only thing that ever actually guaranteed a drop before this was Molten Sands Fortress, I think. Mm-hmm. And that one's an interesting fort to do, but it's always really out of the way whenever it comes up.
Yeah. It's been a really nice change. I'm glad that they're listening to some of the feedback, or at least seeing the interaction with those events and trying to make them more enticing to players to go venture out. So
making it
one thing. No, go ahead.
No, just like making the encounter with the Ashen Lord as well, like reducing the health, helps you to want to go and do it, because if you're going to be stuck there for like an hour and a half trying to kill this thing, that only ups the chances of another crew coming along and being antagonistic towards you. Obviously, you want to try and get in there, get out as quick as possible. You're going to be the same with a fort. So reducing the health has probably helped that a little bit.
It definitely has. And I appreciate the fact that they give you a ritual skull now. So especially with this event, having to do this in the 4th week with other crews, it's going to be interesting to see how people use the Well of Fate lantern colors to make the skeletons vulnerable, and then using the skull
Ashen
flame.
Yeah. That'd be a really cool way to take out like the Fort of the Damned, actually.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that works out, because it's going to be a kind of a, like I mentioned before, breadcrumb trail to the Fort of the Damned with this event. It's going to be really nice to go do an Ashen Winds and still have time to go do a Fort of the Damned. The thing that I've noticed is yesterday I was sailing with some friends, and we were going out to just kind of hang out and do some stuff, part of our community. And we saw that someone had started up a Fort of the Damned, and everyone started flocking to it. And one thing that I would like to know as I'm kind of sailing around, the Fort of the Damned is a huge indicator that someone is actively trying to do something most of the time. Not always, but most of the time someone's trying to actively do the fort there. You don't really see that with the skeleton ships or the Ashen Winds or the skeleton forts. A lot of the time you see those pop up, and until they go down on their own, you're never quite sure if someone's actually working on them or if they just kind of despawn on their own time. And I would love to see if there was a change to the indicator of those events that give people an idea of, if someone's actively working on it to help kind of promote some of that player engagement, some of that PvP that you can get out there. Because some people really want that, and it's harder to know if something's going on or if it's just up and no one's actually doing it.
It's like I think during like the first year or so, it was like a rumor that on the Skull Cloud, if it had like red or orangey eyes, it meant someone was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think that's ever been proved true. But having a way to know that, oh, there are some other people over there, either we can avoid that, or hey, let's go over there, try and alliance up or cause some mischief. It'd be nice.
Right, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that kind of plays into some of the logic behind the emissary system, where it's sort of you can opt into this increased rewards, but it's also going to give other people around kind of an idea of what you're doing and an ability to maybe track you. And that is an added risk. And so I think that the same could go for those big event clouds that have more rewards than usual. You're going to get more rewards if you go do that, but you're also going to communicate to other people that you are doing that, and it might increase the risk. Because I think that the way that they played out kind of early in the game, when there was just the skull forts, they were really reliable spots for PvP. And you don't quite see that anymore around any of the clouds. You might get PvP, but it used to be, a fort would pop up, and they only really popped up, I think, every 3 hours. So if you saw one on your server, chances are somebody on that server wants to do it because it's not going to pop for another 3 hours, and there's going to be a conflict, and that is kind of the point. So that has kind of eroded over time, and they're no longer very competitive. But instituting at least just a little bit more of that, I can see what other players on the server are kind of up to, whether they're emissaries, whether they're doing reapers, or whether they're maybe doing a cloud battle thing. That would be great. I'd like that a lot.
We have seen that in not to discredit the dev team on this, because as we were talking about it, I did realize that this actually has been kind of the trend. For example, Flameheart, when Flameheart's in the sky, if you're doing it and someone comes in, they actually announce that to the players that are in the area. I'd like to see it both ways. I'd like to see it that if someone's doing the flame, and I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but if Flameheart was active and someone was actually taking down the forts, if there was just a broadcast wide sea wide like or how dare you, and everyone is just alerted to the fact that Flameheart was fighting someone, that would be kind of an indicator. Kind of goes back to the idea that Chapman had forever ago, where we had the Kraken, and the Kraken and the Skull Fort were the two events in the world. And the idea of the Kraken was that everyone on the server would know that there's a Kraken going on, and they would see the tentacles, and they'd flock to the to the fight to either take down the Kraken or to take down the ship that's fighting the Kraken and take their treasure. And I never ever felt like that was the case. It always felt like the Kraken hit, and it was either a boon to the person you were chasing from the fort, or a detriment to you running away from the person, from the people coming after you from the fort. And I'd like to have something that kind of, these are world encounters. Let's make sure the world is actually aware that these encounters are going on, aside from them just being up. As we kind of rein in this much longer episode than I thought it was going to be. I hope you guys don't mind. I'd love to get Jeff and Dray your thoughts on the event overall. Is it been a boon? Has it been a kind of so-so? I know we talked a little bit about it being kind of recycled content, which I know some people have that sentiment. So what are some of your thoughts on it? Do you feel like the people that feel it's recycled, is that validated, or do you feel this is different enough?
Well, I think that to an extent, absolutely, this is recycled content. This is not a drastically new gameplay change. There's not really a new feature that is like something different than we've done before. I think that what it does for the potential, though, there's a lot of actually things that are new in there that open up potential for even more exciting events later. So when you look at the event tab being in game, that's going to really change the way that they can do these challenges outside of the game, the website events that now are really part of the game. That is going to really, I think, help with engagement and giving people something to do that isn't so far out of the way for them to figure out that it's even going on. I think most players don't even know these events are happening. So that event is huge. And then the one is the ability for them to do a multi-week thing without forcing a game update where they take the servers offline for a couple hours and then update the game and maybe introduce new bugs. Instead, they did this thing where they've got 4 weeks of different content in one build, and they can just turn it on and off each week. That is a huge little innovation that I think now it's in their tool set. It's in their toolbox of things they can do in future events when they want to, when it makes sense to. And I hope they stick with that. They also added some good lore, some good dialogue, little things that just kind of take something that is, yes, recycled, but put a spin on it. And the way that you now have voyages where you talk to NPCs and do a little task for an NPC, that's never happened before. Right now, everything that I've just complimented has been implemented in maybe the barest bones starting out. Like this is an introduction to doing these concepts, but they're concepts that they can expand on. They can do more with this than just find a boot and give the boot to Merrick. That's just like the first try at this. And this is a very kind of simple idea, but there's more they can do with it. And that is exciting to me. And then beyond that, it's just recognizing the reality of the development situation. That we can't get as big of huge new features that as frequently as we had been getting them during this period of difficult development with the global pandemic and with working from home, all the struggles they're facing. So I think that people need to take a little bit of a breath and know that one, major new content is coming, and you just kind of have to be patient. It's nobody's fault. And two, they are putting a lot of effort into taking what some would call recycled content and making it as interesting as they can, making it a reason to engage with the game. And if you play the game for 40 hours a week, this content's not going to keep you engaged. But I think that for the people who just want something to point them in a different direction when they log in for their weekly session, maybe they only even play every 2 weeks, and they log in and they see there's something to point them in a direction and some challenge for them to go do, that's enough. And the last thing I'll say is that if it's not enough for you, the new content, I really think the game is in a pretty healthy place with old content that is still like they've grown the amount of options you have. Whereas I think that at launch, when there was accusations that there was not enough content to do, it was pretty accurate and fair. Whereas now, if I want to do something different every time I play, I can. I could do something different for 14 straight days and not repeat the same stuff. I could go do a different Tall Tale. I could go do the Fort of the Damned, a different cloud battle. I could do voyages. I could be an emissary. I could decide to be a Reaper's Bones and just antagonize people, or Athena voyages or whatever. So I think that I'm not trying to make excuses for Rare. They're putting a lot in the Pirate Emporium. That's not slowing down, but maybe the content we're getting as players is slowing down a little. I just think people need to look at the reasons for why that is, have a little patience, and enjoy the content that is there, that I think they're doing a good job with.
No, definitely. I'm quite happy with this update. For a lot of the same reasons. I think the event tab is some great base work, some great foundations that they can improve upon. Hopefully that they do see the criticisms about its UI and find a way to streamline that in the future. Obviously they can iterate on that, which is one of the wonderful things about this being an online and ongoing and a living sort of world, rather than it just being static. Here's an update, it's not going to change. Here's an update, it's not going to change. They can take the information, they can see what's working, and they can see what isn't working and adapt it so that it hits in the way that they wanted it to. I think that, this is recycled content. If you have no interest in Fort of the Damned or the Flames of Fate, then this particular update isn't for you. If the rewards don't excite you enough to want to go and do some of the stuff that you've already done, then it's not for you. Hopefully they will do something in the future that is for you, and more than likely they will, because there's so many different things that they could do. I mean, I'm kind of all for them recycling content in new and different ways that kind of give it a different angle, give it a different understanding, because like one of the big things is this is a really good one for lore. And so what they've done with just getting people to re-engage with the Flames of Fate, the beacons, and the Fort of the Damned is that they've given a little bit of lore into that, a little bit of understanding of what's happening in the world, maybe explaining a little bit more about the Fort of the Damned. I mean, we're only in week 2. We haven't seen the payoff of it yet. Hopefully the payoff will be really good and that we'll have a big revelation by the end of it as to what's happening, why these Shadows of Fate are here. But I'm all for them recycling other things and recontextualize, as a word, recontextualizing some of the things, because I'd like them to do that with like the Ashen Tomes. Who still does the Ashen Tomes, who still needs to get them. There's probably a load of players out there who still need to do Ashen Tomes but don't necessarily ever get the chance to go and do those and to collect those. So
True.
Yeah, making another event about that would be really good. I think this is a really positive update, and there's a lot that there is there that they can build upon and make into something a lot more new or a lot more exciting for those players who maybe think this isn't particularly exciting, that this is just a kind of run-of-the-mill, kind of just do the same thing that we've always done. But yeah, there's definitely some big things happening. We just don't know how long it's going to be, and we don't know what it's going to be.
I'm extremely excited to see how things progress, especially with Captain Grey Marrow constantly being brought back to our world between the realms, and seeing if maybe there is a culmination to his story and what becomes of him. I mean, maybe we kind of turn the table, as it were, and find a way to trap his soul. Finally,
possibly, you never know. He's probably getting a little bit sick of being resurrected constantly and then just killed and then brought back and then killed. The poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really touch upon like the social media note that kind of does give a little bit of insight as to what's happening here with the whole Grey Marrow situation. Did you want to bring it up
real quick?
Yeah. So there's just like a note that they brought up. I'd have to quickly just bring up the image and the translation of it. But it's basically written in the runes. And it's something along the lines of bring back. There's a whole bunch at the beginning I don't quite understand. There is flame from pirates to camp, Easter Flame, Skeleton Lord resurrection, and the most important part is Lord to face Captain Flameheart, Cage Flameheart for eternity, which is like, again, that feeds into the idea of, well, Grey Marrow is all about binding and sealing people. But it also seems like there's somebody out there who wants Grey Marrow to get rid of Flameheart. So
yeah, and we know that Flameheart, when he was defeated the first time, he was sealed away. As he says, he was betrayed by his own kind. And so what I think that the note kind of implies is that this is a faction of skeletons trying to resurrect Grey Marrow because they want him to defeat Flameheart. So not all skeletons are united under one banner. Not all skeletons are working for Flameheart.
Which is really interesting that the Skellies kind of have that facet to them, because we all kind of think of them as just like faceless minions that all just do the bidding of one guy, but they're all split off under who they follow.
Well, it's really apparent that power attracts these skeletons. We've got the ones that are willing to follow the Warsmith. We've got the Ashen Lords that are willing to follow Flameheart, and it's clear that Grey Marrow has these skeletons of the Fate of Flames that follow him.
Yeah,
that are, you know, each group of skeletons is its own faction, and each one aren't necessarily out to just kill us. They're trying to do their own bidding. And I'm curious if the Sea of Thieves is going to see a time where we start seeing these power struggles, these territories kind of etched out, and we start to see like, okay, well, Grey Marrow has his stronghold over in the Ancient Isles, where his power is more prominent with the combination of the Fort of the Damned and Old Boot Fort. There, that veil has been split between the Sea of the Damned and stuff, whereas Flameheart is kind of taking hold or taking place over closer towards the Shores of Plenty with the Reaper's hideout. and Wanda and Stitcher Jim, whereas the Gold Hoarder, Wrathbone, is kind of keeping track of everything from the Devil's Roar and where his, where Tribute Peak is, and we start to see these kind of I can't think of these strongholds essentially, to where we're going to have these three factions kind of butting heads somewhere in the middle, and how they're going to try and stop each other. Obviously, Wrathbone wants all of the gold, and the only way to do that is to take out everyone that has gold on it. Greymarrow is trying to keep Flameheart potentially locked away forever so that he can rule the sea, and Flameheart is trying to take over both the Sea of the Damned and the Sea of Thieves, in spite of what's happened to him, and where Flameheart Jr. falls into all of this. But we're still we're still quite a ways out from finding all of that stuff. I did want to wrap things up, just to give us a chance to have something to talk about in the future. Dray, starting with you, where can people reach out to you if they want to follow you, if they want to follow the Golden Sands blog posts and stuff? Where can they get in touch with you?
Oh, they can follow me over on Twitter. I believe my Twitter handle is SmugglersDray. Obviously, you can also check out Golden Sands Blogpost for the articles that I write up on there, like all the guides, the lore stuff. That's the main places. I'm starting to try and do some Twitch stuff, and I believe that will be Deadeye Dray over at Twitch.
Awesome. And where, as far as the actual the blog post, that's over on Medium, but Jeff, if people want to get a hold of you, where can they hit you up?
So I'm on Twitter at Golden Sands Blog. That's the Twitter handle for sharing the blog post, but also I use it as my personal handle for within the Sea of Thieves community and Rare community. And then on top of that, we've got, if you needed the web address, medium.com/golden-sands-blogpost.
Awesome. And if people are interested in contributing to the Golden Sands blog post, is that something that you guys are open to at the moment?
It's not something we've really explored too much. The one thing that I had kind of put some thought into was hosting guest writers if people wanted to create editorial content. If someone had a pitch for a post and said, here's what I think of this, or here's the future of Sea of Thieves, or here's something, any kind of angle you would take on more of an editorial take. If you had a pitch and wanted to potentially be featured as a writer there, Medium makes that very easy. You create a Medium account, create a draft of a post, and reach out to me, and we can look at possibly publishing that on the website, and you'll obviously be credited as the author on that. We don't generate any revenue at all, so don't expect that. But we do have a Patreon, by the way, if anyone wants to just throw it. We use that just as a tip jar. If anyone feels like throwing us a dollar or whatever, that's available. But I'm not here asking for money. That's just, I felt like I had to drop that mention. And I did want to say lastly, before I go, just because I have the platform here, if anyone from the Sea of Thieves team is listening to this, which I assume most likely is, I really want to see them put traps in places, maybe on forts, maybe on skeleton forts, in a way where the trap has a durability. It breaks down, and then you can repair it with wood planks, and then you can use the traps against skeletons, but then it will break down, and then you got to go and repair it. So then you're fighting waves of skeletons on a fort, but then you could use the traps, and then you've got to keep them maintained, sort of almost a tower defense more style. Anyway, that's way off topic. I had to throw it out there. I've been thinking about that one for a long time. But yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Logan, for letting us be on here. And it's something that we've been interested in, and we love the podcast. So really happy to have had the chance to be on here and talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great honor. It's fantastic to be able to talk to you and just to hang out. Yeah. Been great.
It's my pleasure. We've been following each other on Twitter for a long time. We've been in the community for a long time, and I'm trying to make a point to go into my mind palace and think about like all the people that I have talked to and all the people that I have yet to talk to. So I'm trying to write down a list of like all the folks that I'm like, I really want to get them on the show because I love it. You guys have been on that list for a long time, and I'm glad that I finally got an opportunity to have you join me. It's been a true pleasure getting the chance to sit down and actually chat with you. These are the conversations that I love having with you guys as well as anyone else on just as we're sailing around, but to get a chance to actually sit down for a couple hours and actually record it all is been a real joy. I hope these are ideas that people like. I hope people kind of latch on to some of your thoughts, especially the traps or the lore perspectives and stuff. And I hope we can kind of help try and form some more of Sea of Thieves together with the devs and the community and see how people react to this. Also, can we get campfires on the outposts? It's really crazy that you can't cook anything on outposts.
Oh,
maybe the campfire or the actual fireplace in the tavern, maybe, please.
Yeah.
Wow. That really honestly sounds like an oversight now that you mention it.
Huh.
So
well, get on it.
Well, thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to have links to your social media stuff in the show notes. If anyone is listening to this and didn't write anything down, it's all there for you guys. And again, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
so
my
much.
pleasure. All right, Pirates, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining in the second part of this Golden Sands blog post special edition of Keelhauled podcast, I guess. So if you guys are looking forward to more content like this, definitely feel free to let me know over on Twitter at CAPT_LOGUN. CAPTLOGUN@gmail.com is the show email address if you want to send in your stories or suggestions, any kind of ideas you might have. And if you guys are happy with this, feel free to join up with the Keelhauled Discord community. They are always out there hanging out, having fun, talking about next gen, doing all kinds of sailing, playing Among Us, all kinds of fun stuff. So love to have people in there hanging out, chatting from time to time, sharing their lives, and making some new friends. And with that, Pirates, that's going to do it for this episode of Keelhauled. Thank you, I love you, and I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.
Hey there, my name's Jameson, or Big Cat.
And I am Brenna, or Mother Goose.
And together, we are the hosts of the DL, Weekly Gaming News.
Each week, we bring you the top stories from last week, as well as something you might have missed.
Our goal is to start a conversation about what's going on in the world of gaming.
And every week, we have a special guest join us in the chat room, where we discuss a different gamer-related topic and learn more about our guests in the 60-second download.
And if that isn't enough, we also have Slim Jims.
So come and hang out with us every week and join in on the conversation.
Good luck and have fun, everybody.
And remember, keep your goose loose.
Hey, I'm Tom.
And I'm Stuart.
And we're from the Dungeons & Dragons Lorecast.
We talk about all things connected to D&D lore.
And we're on the Robots Radio Network. So if you're into Dungeons & Dragons or you're into lore, then come check us out. You can find us on any podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts.
Roll more dice.
That's the Dungeons & Dragons Lorecast.